the slowest. So 170 competitors set off on this 2-kilometer course. Fairly smooth waters, making the swimming fairly easy. You can see very few athletes wearing wetsuits. In fact, the organizers recommended that many of the amateurs wear the wetsuits, but the professionals, well, they're stuck without their wetsuits because of the water temperature. Early leader, well, that is Brian Rhodes from New Zealand and Jason Harper from Australia. And the pre-race favorite, Greg Welsh, the Australian, the Ironman champion of last year. He's tucked in behind in third position. Looks as though Harper has lost his cap as Rhodes sets the pace. Considering the weather conditions, we've got a little drizzly rain. There's still a lot of people have come out to support the athletes. So it's still Harper and Rhodes battling at the front. Welsh is playing the waiting game. We understand the lead woman, Wendy Ingram, in fact, is just behind Welsh. If our cameras move back just a little bit, we'll see Wendy Ingram, the American swimmer, the national collegiate swimmer. She's in fourth position overall. And, well, we're getting used to these women, certainly taking the men on in the swim division of triathlon. So you can see the 170-odd competitors stretched out across this 2-kilometer triangular course as our leaders are coming up to the final buoy, then they head back in the 500 meters or so towards the finish. And it's still Jason Harper and Brian Rhodes, the Australian and the New Zealander, with Greg Welsh, the Mighty Mouse. He got that name after the Mickey Mouse World Championships back in, 1990, which he won in Florida. And that's number 24. That's Jason Harper. He's still just in front of Brian Rhodes, who's lost his swim cap. This is, well, they're coming up towards the final turn, and then it's straight back to the beach, straight back to the spectators into the Donaro Island Resort. In fact, the beach is just between the Sheraton and Regent hotels, the host hotels for this event. And I suppose the athletes are glad we're not having the typical Fijian weather. It's normally about 90-95 degrees at the moment. You can imagine that with the same humidity. It would be pretty disgusting for the athletes. Terrible. But no, it's ideal as Harper and Rhodes just got a glimpse of the others. In fact, Wendy Ingram, we just saw go through the picture. It was a very quick glimpse of her. You can see the three have got away, but Wendy Ingram is on the front of that chasing pack. But it's still Harper, Rhodes and Welsh coming up towards the end of the opening 2-kilometer swim. I really am surprised that many more professional athletes aren't here, because there's a staggering $50,000 up for grabs. That's something like $11,250 to the first man and woman. So it's a lot of money at stake. Certainly keep the food rationing going for a while. But this is our men leaders coming out of the water. Rhodes, Harper and Welsh. It looks like Rhodes has just done the sprint up the beach. He's going for glory. And he's out in 24 minutes and 40 seconds. Right behind Jason Harper. Just 2 seconds adrift, 24:42. As now they make their way a short run down into the transition area. This is Greg Welsh coming through the picture. 24:46. So that's a good performance by Welsh. He's just in the position he wanted to be. He's had a bit of a tow all the way around, so that was fairly easy for him. Now it's the change, and we're waiting for Wendy Ingram. Here she is, fourth out of the water overall, 25 minutes and 8 seconds. That's not bad going. So now it's the change for all of them. There's Wendy just going in now. That's the second lady out of the water. That's Megan Dalton. She's out in 7th position overall, 26 minutes and 30 seconds. And she's got a whole gaggle of men, which included Tony O'Hagan, the New Zealander, Darren Walsh, and Alan Hogg, one of the amateur age group as we saw there with the wetsuit. He was out in 26:35. But these are the men. And in fact, Locke Valmerhouse, he was about, fifth out of the water. He's now taken the lead. This is him, number 41, the youngster. In fact, we saw a lot of Locke Valmerhouse in Europe a couple of years ago. He was one of those Aussies who were with Brett Sutton up at altitude at Alpe d'Huez. Brian Rhodes, though, is just in front of Valmerhouse. So we've got Rhodes, Valmerhouse and Welsh vying for the lead at the moment as they go out through the Donaro Beach Resort out onto this really tough bike course. The first 10-20 kilometers or so are fairly easy, then they hit the hills. And I think Rhodes And Welsh and Valmerhouse, they're certainly going to know when they get there. There's a long struggle for the first climb of something like 5 kilometers, and then they had a real roller coaster for about 15 or so kilometers before they reach the turn at 45 kilometers. Then they come back and do it all again. And I don't think it's any easier, but certainly not a lot of wind around today to make life too difficult. You can see the weather's clearing slightly. The sun's coming out, it's peeking through the broken cloud as Brian Rhodes, the New Zealander, he's still out in the lead, pushing hard. He knows if he's going to beat Welsh, he's really got to do the business on the bike section, because Welsh, the 29-year-old Australian from Sydney, spends most of his time in America. He's one of the best runners in the sport. In fact, Welsh's wife, Sian Williams, she's a British national. I don't think she's got her American citizenship yet, but Sian Williams Welsh, or whatever you want to call her, she's actually racing in the women's event, although she's well off the pace at the moment. Wendy Ingram is having a bit of a battle with Sue Latshaw. This is Valmerhouse. He's just been, well, he did get in front, but you can see Rhodes has just gone back in front again. So the three of them, Welsh is just out of the picture behind them. They're having a bit of a battle, a little bit battle royal at the front of the pack, but got quite a few behind as well. Tony Hagen is there, and Chris Lee is on a bit of a man on a mission. He's certainly coming through into contention, and unfortunately for us in Europe, we don't see many of these athletes over here. They tend to stay down in the southern hemisphere, bearing in mind they're just coming out of their, well, in fact, not the southern hemisphere. A lot of southern hemisphere athletes are competing. That's Valmerhouse just going through the picture. A lot of them don't come over to Europe to compete. There's Welsh on his soft ride bike, or certainly suspended seat. I don't know if it is a soft ride, but certainly Valmerhouse here, the youngster, is setting a cracking pace for the others to follow. But I suppose Welsh will be quite happy. He's in the final stages of preparing for the Gatorade Hawaii Ironman World Triathlon Championships, which of course he won. He was the first non-American to win that event last year. That's Tony O'Hagan just on the right of the picture there. We saw him in Euroman in Switzerland earlier this year. And right beside him was Chris Lee. Looks as though Robin Tullett here, another New Zealander, number 6 here, is at the end of this pack. He's finding it a bit hard. You can see he's struggling a little to stay in contention. So there's quite a few athletes up there. As I mentioned, they're not too well known in Europe. This is Wendy Ingram, the lead woman. She's still in the lead. We understand Sue Latshaw's making a little inroads into her lead, but not too much. As our leaders, it's still Valmerhouse, Rhodes, and Welsh. They're heading out towards the turn. This is Welsh on the back end. He really does have one of the best records in the sport of triathlon. He's won the World Championships under the International Triathlon Union, 1990. I mentioned earlier the Mickey Mouse World Championships down in Orlando, Florida, when the Australians had a clean sweep. I think Brad Bevan was one of the top 3, with Welsh, at any rate, being the winner. And of course, on that day, the Americans, with Karen Smars leading, also went 1, 2, 3 in the women's division. And neither country has been able to do it since. And in fact, really, the World Championships of the men since then have been dominated by the Brits. Simon Lessing won in, what, 91? And in fact, should I say 92, he won up in Muskoka. And then Miles Stewart won in 91 down in Australia in Surfers Paradise. And then ever since, we've seen Spencer Smith dominate. But unfortunately for Smith, I don't think he's going to contend his world title this year. So this looks like the chasing pack. We've got Chris Lee on the inside. Lee with an L-E-G-H, an unusual spelling. With the New Zealand Ironman specialist, Tony O'Hagan. Let's hope he does a little better than he did in Euroman. He sort of, in cycling parlance, bonked on the bike. He ran out of energy and struggled towards the closing stages. But he's certainly doing pretty well at the moment. Also in there, actually, is another Australian, Bruce Thomas, who won the Australian Ironman a couple of years ago. So this sort of middle distance event is not quite a half Ironman. It's more of the classic middle distance. 2K swim, 90K bike, and 21 kilometers of running to finish. The 2K run is slightly long, of course. It's a 3.8 kilometer swim in the Ironman, so it really should be a 1.9 kilometer swim, but we're not going to quibble over 100 meters, are we? So they're coming up towards the turn point, and it's still Welsh, Rhodes and Valmerhouse. This is Welsh coming up towards the turn, and I'm surprised he's actually taken the lead so early. But as he does, heads back towards home, we'll go for our first break.
Sylvester Stallone and Antonio Banderas play the deadliest game of all when they battle to be the #1 assassin. Enter the Assassins competition for a chance to win a one-week Royal Caribbean cruise or a private screening of the new Warner Brothers action suspense movie, Assassins. Other prizes include the movie poster and a Eurosport cap. So don't wait. Play and win on the Eurosport hotline now. Assassins. There's only room at the top for one. Ships behind me cracked a slam to. Whole ship gave a sickening heave and sang. We moon swung in, groaning, or showed me the lee after deck. The sea, its heroes, its races, its legends. Sailing Magazine, the magazine of today's sailing world. Sailing Magazine, Friday midnight on Eurosport.
Welcome back to a Triathlon Professional Tour doubleheader. We're here in Fiji for the Heaven to Heaven, and then we're going to move on to Texas in America for the South Padre Gatorade Triathlon. But out front in this particular event is the Australian Greg Welsh. This is Chris Lee. He's down in about 4th or 5th position going around the turn. Tony O'Hagan is in there as well, as is Bruce Thomas. But at the front, it's Welsh, Valmerhouse and Brian Rhodes. Although I think on the way back, maybe Rhodes and Valmerhouse are going to struggle a bit. But this is Welsh. This is the Australian Greg Welsh. You can see the weather's clamped in a bit. It's well, the forecast was cloudy with drizzle, and it certainly lived up to its expectations. This is Rhodes down in 2nd place. Valmerhouse is he's dropping off the pace a little. The youngster is paying for his exuberance early on, that outward leg of the 90k bike. So they went out 45 kilometers, and now you can see, I mentioned earlier, the sort of the hilly terrain the last 20 kilometers. This real area really does show it off. This is still Valmerhouse. He's in 3rd position, but he's starting to lose touch with Welsh here and Brian Rhodes. And I think as the race progresses, certainly Valmerhouse, he's not used to this middle distance event. He's going to struggle a bit, I think, to maintain that early race form. This is Rhodes also dropping back a little bit. Looks like Chris Lee has made a move. He's coming through. And this is a strong bike ride by Chris Lee. We haven't seen him at all in Europe during our summer, but I understand he's a fair force down in the southern hemisphere. And in fact, he's caught up with Welsh. So there we are. Lee's come back from about a 2-minute deficit after the swim, and now he's back into contention, or he's into contention at the front of the road. So I'm sure Welsh will be quite happy. He was finding it a little lonely on this return leg of the 45 kilometers back into the Donaro Island Resort. But now he's got some company, so he'll be quite happy. I mentioned earlier that he's in his final preparations for the Gatorade Hawaii Ironman, which he won last year. He was the first non-American male to win that event. It's been dominated by the likes of Mark Allen and Dave Scott. In fact, Dave Scott is here in for the Heaven to Heaven. He's been invited down. He's given a bit of a seminar, telling them how, well, I'm not really sure if he's giving all his secrets away, but he's certainly telling them how he did win his 6th Hawaii Ironman, and hopefully many of the age groupers and maybe the professionals will take some glee from that and help them. So this is Rhodes, the early leader with Valmerhouse. They're dropping off the pace. Both, Rhodes and Valmerhouse. Chris Lee and Welsh are now well down the road. This is Wendy Ingram, still leading the women's division. She's been there virtually throughout at the moment, but she's got some company. That's Sue Latshaw, another American going through the picture. And Sue Latshaw is doing pretty well on the Pro Tour. She's in 3rd position in the women's event coming into the Fiji event. It's led by Michele Jones. Karen Smyers, neither are here at the moment. In fact, we'll see Jones in the second part of the program. She races in South Padre, but Smyers, like Welsh, is in their final preparations for Hawaii. The Hawaii Ironman was a major goal this year, so she's decided to miss the last 2 or 3 races in the Pro Tour, and really that's cost her the #1 ranking she's had for the last couple of years. Of course, she was second to McKeely Jones in those professional championships in Austria at Mountain Man, which were won in the men's division by Britain's Simon Lessing. So in the men's division, for the pro rankings, we've got Welsh, Lessing and Hobson at the 4 coming before this event. Welsh is on 360 points, and only 30 points adrift is Lessing, with Wes Hobson in 3rd position on 275. Hobson's not here, he's racing in South Padre. So the leaders, Welsh and Lee, are now coming back into the town, and they go through the town of Nadu, then they go into the Donaro Island Resort for their final transition from bike to run. So the 90 kilometers is tucked away quite nicely for the 2 leaders. Many of the other professionals, and of course just, well, all the age groupers, they're still out on the road. They've got a long time to go and a long distance to go before they're in the position of these 2. And this really is a beautiful holiday destination. If you're looking for someone to come, you can't go far wrong to come to Fiji. So here we are. This is our leaders. It's Chris Lee, just going for glory, going into the transition area. And Greg Welsh. Looks as though Welsh had a 2-hour, 18, 40-minute bike split. And in fact, Lee recorded the fastest of the event, 2 hours, 16 minutes and 57 seconds for that 90K. So that's a pretty swift time by Lee. And I think Welsh will be pretty pleased. His preparations are going well for that Hawaii Ironman, especially after the disappointment of Ironman Rote, when he had that niggling little calf injury, which forced him to drop out just after, what, about 10 kilometers of running. Then he had a pretty good run into the Mrs. T Chicago race. I think he finished 4th, but not quite at his peak. And now he's in the real heavy training for Ironman, and certainly this middle distance event, the half Ironman here, will do his cause a great deal of good. So Lee is first out onto the final 21-kilometer run with Greg Welsh, who must be the favorite. He's certainly got the reputation, he has the form, and certainly has the talent to win. So we're looking for our 3rd place athlete coming off of the bike. We haven't seen a lot of the others, but he's been dominated by these 2. Well, already Welsh has decided that he's had enough of being in 2nd place. He's going to go for broke fairly early on. It's a long run for home. It's 21 kilometers. That's 13 miles in O terms. Of course, we're now gone totally metric. 3rd off the bike. Well, that's Brian Rhodes, that early leader. 2 hours, 22 minutes and 52 seconds was his bike split. So that's a fairly good performance. You can see the wet conditions underfoot because of that rain. This is Darren Wood, an American. He's in, 4th position. 2:22.15 his bike split. 4th overall, in fact, right behind Bruce Thomas, the Australian Ironman champion of a couple of years ago in Tunkpree Foster. This looks like our lead Fijian athlete going through. That's Kirk Jennings. Tony O'Hagan here, he's in 6th position time-wise, 2 hours 23 bike split. Jason Harper, who was he was first out of the water with Brian Rhodes, so he's dropped off the pace quite a little bit. They're something like 7 or 8 minutes behind our lead man, but the lead woman is Wendy Ingram. She's something like 11th overall at the moment. 2 hours 36 minutes and 11 seconds her bike split, so that's good form for Ingram, and of course she's looking to do her best yet at the Hawaii Ironman, as is this man, Greg Welsh. We can see that Chris Lee has dropped off slightly. He's finding the Welsh pace too hard to handle, and I'm not, well, to be honest, I'm not too surprised. Back in 1989, Welsh was in his, I think it was his first Ironman. He had a great debut, finished 3rd. And that was the great battle between Mark Allen and Dave Scott that year, where they renamed the hill going into Kona, the Allen Hill, because that's where he made the break with about a mile or so to go, and set up that great victory. But this is Welsh. He's looking to have another great victory here after that Hawaii Ironman win. I mentioned earlier, $50,000 up for grabs, and surprisingly, not many top athletes grabbing it. Last year, Mike Pigg was the winner here. In fact, Germany's Lothar Leder finished second with Simon Knowles. I thought Knowles would have been here in third position. Fourth last year was Scott Balance. He's here, but he's struggling. He's dropped out. But this is Welsh, taking some applause, well-earned applause, I might add, as he goes back through the Nadu town before he goes out to the turn point, then heads for home. So it's just about 10, 11 kilometers out, turn around and back again. Last year, Wendy Ingram, in fact, the position she's in at the moment, well, she stayed in that position all the time last year. She had a fantastic victory over McKeely Jones, and not many people have done that in the sport. So Ingram's looking to repeat the win, but unfortunately for her, maybe fortunately, McKeely Jones isn't here. This is Chris Lee in second position. They've gone around the turn. Now it's, well, they do it again, but in reverse. Bruce Thomas has moved through into third position. He's certainly got the endurance strength, that Ironman winner, the Australian. But it's still the mighty mouse. It's still Greg Welsh. He was the US Pro Champion back in 1991. Not many non-Americans have had that title. Just saw Wendy Ingram going the other way, leading the women's race. And we understand Sue Latshaw is catching her. There's Sue Latshaw just going through the picture. So Ingram's going to have some company fairly quickly. But Welsh, the only company he's got is the lead vehicle, the lead cameraman, and that big truck behind him. Don't know what he's doing there, but protecting him from, I don't know, the locals. They're certainly enjoying themselves, aren't they? It's good to see, though, that this is an unusual event on Fiji. In fact, they have two major triathlons each year. They had one earlier in the year. And I don't know where they get their money from, but I think that one had about $50,000 or $60,000 of prize money. So someone's certainly piling some money in, and this is a great place to come, certainly, to win some money and enjoy yourself, relax in this beautiful location. So Welsh is now back into the Denara Island Resort. He's not long to go to the finish. Chris Lee is in second position. Bruce Thomas is in third position. In the women's division, Wendy Ingram, she's had all her own way for so long. She's now been relegated to second position. Sue Latshaw, the number 3 ranked professional, has gone through, showing that that's no fluke. In fact, Wendy Ingram is ranked number 4 on the Pro Tour at the moment. But Latshaw, she's gone through here. Like Ingram, she's training now. She's in the closing preparations for the Hawaii Ironman, which is the penultimate race on the professional tour. We've just got this one. We've got the South Padre event after this, and then it's the Hawaii Ironman. But the Hawaii Ironman champion, Australian Greg Welsh, looks as though he's going to win here in heaven to heaven, so it's pretty heavenly for him. Excuse the pun. So this is Greg Welsh, the 29-year-old Australian, winning time, 3 hours, 58 minutes and 24 seconds. That's the race director. Congratulating him. 1 hour, 14 minutes and 58 minutes the run split. So that's the, in fact, it's the fastest of the day. I know he's the first in, but I can tell you overall it was the fastest of the day. Second in was Chris Lee, 4 hours, 2 minutes and 4 seconds. 1 hour 18. He dropped 4 minutes on that run to Welsh. So 1 hour 18:42, but it in fact was the second fastest of the day. Bruce Thomas in third position, the Australian, 4 hours, 8 minutes and 19 seconds. And for the half marathon, he took just under 1 hour 20, 1 hour 19 and 42 seconds. So Welsh, Lee and Thomas. And for the women, well, Sue Latshaw, she took the lead just about at the halfway stage, just about 11 kilometers in the run. And Wendy Ingram didn't drop that too much on the closing stages, but Sue Latshaw hung on bravely to win. And I can tell you, she finished 13th overall, 4 hours, 27 minutes and 54 seconds. Her time, run time, 1 hour, 24:59. So that's a good run for Latshaw. And if she does that in Hawaii, she could be a major threat. Wendy Ingram's tiring a little, you can see, but she's still smiling. Wingnut Ingram, 4 hours, 30:08 was her time for second position. And well, someone we haven't seen is Christina Hauser from Australia. Here she is. She's coming in third position. By the way, Ingram was 16th overall, and 17th overall was Christina Hauser. 4 hours, 34 minutes and 44 seconds. Well, there we have it. That's the second heaven-to-heaven triathlon. And the pro rankings, they don't change a lot. Welsh increases his lead to 460 points over Lessing and Hobson. In the women's division, it's still McKeely Jones. Well, that's the heaven-to-heaven. We'll take a short break, then come back to South Padre in Texas.